Yep, we're live, Chair.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Thursday, 5th of November, 10 a.m, and we are streaming live. I'd like to start this morning's committee and ask if we have any apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from Councillor Stowe.
And I'm also aware, I've received apologies from Councillor Guy Renner-Thompson, who's on leave at the moment. Do we have any more apologies from the floor?
Councillor Campbell, Chair.
Thank you. Any more?
Actually, Chair, I've just received an apology from Councillor Jones.
Thank you.
Cabinet member.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. We have minutes. They were presented at full council yesterday, but we have minutes of Thursday, the 17th of September, and also Thursday, the 1st of October. Do we have any issues or items to raise from those, please? Councillor Dickinson?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah. I just wanted to reference in the minutes because I'm not sure where else I can. And I was hoping the cabinet member was going to be here because obviously there was some announcements following cross-party discussions yesterday around working groups and things. And obviously the minutes reference free school meals and such like. Yeah. And I just wondered if this was the committee that was going to set that up or whether it was another forum or what the plan was. I don't know if you know, Chair, or whether we need to press for that, because I think it would be this committee that would be suitable potentially.
Following yesterday's announcement that was made by the leader with regards to a working party, it's not actually this committee, although I have emailed the leader and Councillor Patterson. I believe it's Councillor Patterson who's leading on that. Back on the 23rd of October, I emailed Kath McAvoy-Carr with regards free school meals. I made a request for a report to come to this committee with regards to what we currently do on free school meals, what possibilities there are to expand on that, what options, costs, etc. So I have already requested for a report to come to this committee. I forwarded that to Councillor Patterson and the leader last night, and Councillor Patterson has responded because what I want to ask is if, as chair of Facts Committee, if I can be involved in that cross-party working group. I understand that there's work already commenced on this, I believe it's child poverty. Work's already commenced, but in the Wansbeck area, so I'm not sure what's ongoing at the moment, but we need to wait and see what comes from that. And hopefully, I agree that we need to be involved as a Facts Committee in that, but it's not just on free school meals, it's on child poverty.
No, I get that, and thanks for the indulgence on the minutes, because I appreciate that, that it's just for accuracy, this piece. But obviously it's very bitty what's going on, and announcements being made in newspapers at full council and various things without any kind of detail. The leader advised us yesterday that Daljit Lally was pulling something together, a range of options, and that they would be discussed and then brought forward. I don't know what the timescale is on that, but we just need to, through you, Chair, push for A, the right representation, B, true cross-party inclusion, and C, information around all these other things that are happening that nobody seems to know about.
So, Chair, do you want me to just come in there? Just
yeah, please, Kath.
Say, Scott, for your for the Scrutiny Committee's assurance, we are taking this away as an action. Mark has already had a conversation with me about that this morning, and following the discussions at full council yesterday, we'll be looking to pull something together, and I'll come back to you with a timeline and what that might look like as soon as I've got that. Is on my to-do list for today.
All right, with that, Scott. Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you, I said, but I was on mute. Yes, thank you.
I could read your lips. Anything else on the minutes to raise, please? Are we okay to approve those? Thank you. Item 3, disclosure of members' interests. Do you have anything to raise that hasn't already been disclosed? Okay. Item 4, forward plan of key decisions.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The forward plan is there for members to know. So there's nothing on there really that's going to come via this committee.
Okay, thank you. Now, item 5, it's supposed to be a verbal update on COVID-19. I'm going to remove that item from the agenda because this afternoon at 1 o'clock, members receive the weekly verbal update. The team is very busy at the moment. We felt it wasn't appropriate for them to just be repeating the same information to members. I'm aware that members of this committee are not all councillors. I'm going to request that following this afternoon's verbal update, weekly verbal update, that the non-council members receive a copy of that verbal update, and that's emailed out to them. If we can arrange that, please. So following on from that, move on to item 6, the COVID recovery report. Now, obviously, this went to Cabinet on the 13th of October. There's been a number of changes and updates, and things have changed since that point. But I'm going to hand you over to Kath McAvoy-Carr, who's going to introduce that item.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise that this report, as Mark said, did go to Council on the 13th of October, and as you'll be aware, the situation with COVID is very fluid and a lot has happened in that very short space of time. At the time of the writing that report, we were in local restrictions in Tier 2 with concerns about whether or not we would go into Tier 3, and obviously as of today we're actually in a full national lockdown, so things have moved very swiftly during that period of time. I think the issues that are probably more pertinent to this committee relate particularly to schools and the continued input and interventions from Public Health England and from our own health protection teams, providing advice and support to teams and helping them to undertake and update risk assessments as appropriate. And just for your information, the information that was shared yesterday at Council was that as of the 2nd of November, and I make that very clear, as of the 2nd of November, we had 396 positive cases in our schools across the county. 86 schools had seen one or more positive cases, and 77 schools have had no positive cases during that period of time. And that so that just gives you an understanding of how the prevalence in relation to our school situation. As you know, as part of the national lockdown, schools will remain open. Schools in early years settings will remain open, and we will continue to offer support and advice as and when that is needed to schools. The comms and engagement subgroup has continued to meet in order to ensure that the messages that are pushed out into the public domain are clear, and we get regular feedback as to whether or not that is effective or not. And we have one of the most interesting pieces of work that's going on is an area of work which is called behavioural insights. So when we come out of lockdown, how can we influence people to excuse me, follow the rules and the guidelines by this behavioural insights work that's being undertaken. So there'll be more information comes out about that at a later stage. I can't profess to know what that will look like, but certainly our comms team are involved in that process, along with our Director of Public Health. The Health Protection Board continues to meet weekly and looks at some of the issues, trends, patterns and concerns that might be prevalent during that week. And we have subgroups that deal with all of the other areas, such as we have a care home subgroup, we have a schools and education subgroup, we have a complex settings subgroup, we have a subgroup that looks at any outbreaks that might occur in hostels or refuges or even in the prison, and also within our own secure unit. Northumberland Communities Together continues to work with organisations right across the voluntary and community sectors, coordinating support to people in need at the time, and we're currently working with the guidance around the clinically extremely vulnerable people some of whom received letters last night, and some of whom will probably be receiving letters in the next couple of days or so. So we're currently looking at how we support our communities and how we support those who are clinically extremely vulnerable to ensure that they get the services that they need. So I don't propose to say anything more unless anybody's got any questions.
Yes, Scott.
Oh, it was just one quick one, Kath. I just wondered what the local authority's position is going to be on attendance. So I'm being contacted by a lot of, and I know it involves the schools directly, but a lot of parents who are really, really anxious about sending their children to school, and are making personal decisions on whether that they send those children or not. Now, a lot of these people are either in a position of being sent home from work themselves, and obviously that raises the anxiety around the safety of the children going to school. And I'm just wondering how we're going to approach that, because obviously, you know, there's a lot of people who are deeply concerned or anxious about the children going to school, who would then be hit with fines and things. I'm not sure how that's going to work.
So prosecution or fining people is always the absolute last resort, and we are wherever we possibly can, and will continue to do so, working with families to try and assist them in ensuring that their children receive an appropriate education. There is no appetite to be prosecuting parents at this point in time. In terms of COVID anxieties, I think I need to be very clear about that. So where this is related to people who are concerned about their children's attendance at school, we will try and work with those families to make sure that they get the education that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to the report, page 10, and it's section 5.3, which is around the support for children's families and schools. And it's specifically referencing the 28 pop-ups that we had operating during the summer. And this kind of aligns to something I think Scott and yourself, Chair, were alluding to when we were talking about the minute, that we do not need to reinvent the wheel around this working group, because over the summer we had these 28 pop-ups. These 28 pop-ups were actually with children and families who were fed using a pilot model with St. Bennet Biscop, where they opened their school kitchen during the summer holidays in order to actually produce the meals which went out to these summer pop-ups. In addition, because I know Ross is on the call, I can see him here, East Bedlington Community Centre were also part of that pilot. So in actual fact, officers, and obviously, you know, a lot of this was put in before I left, we worked together to put a plan up, and we worked together ahead of the summer holidays to get the plan together. So what I'm actually saying is this is a really good summary, and it is a potted summary of what went on in the summer. There was an awful lot of work put in by officers led by Kath, and Emma Richardson, who was heavily involved in it as well. A lot of that work was done, and we need to learn from this work as we move forward to Christmas. Because if we just look at the timeline between now and Christmas, we're what, seven weeks away? Much of this work for the summer was already underway from about May, June onwards. So we have got to get this work on supporting our children with holiday hunger now. And we've also got to make sure that that is in place for holidays into 2021. But I would hope that the working group takes a very clear, and I'm sure will take some very clear information from Emma and her team about what worked using St. Bennet Biscop's kitchen with volunteers, what worked with East Bedlington Community Centre and the use of their kitchen as a hub and spoke model to get food out to the children that we supported over the summer with our holiday pop-up programme. So I just think that's a really important point to make, Chair. We've done this. It's not rocket science. It just needs to be done quickly.
Chair, if I could just come back on just come back on that, because and just to reassure Councillor Daly that actually what the work that is ongoing by officers currently is evaluating all of the schemes that we've offered and the success and the impact that those schemes have had, in order to learn those that work and what we can do, what we can use going forward. And indeed we had some pop-ups during the half-term holidays as well to support the offer across the county.
Thank you.
Mark,
John,
could I just make a point, please?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm here as part of the National Education Union, and the National Education Union have been making some national announcements. I think Kevin Courtney was featured on national TV at the weekend. As far as I'm concerned, national edicts don't always follow up in local actions, and I'm quite comfortable working with you guys because I feel pretty reassured, especially with what Kath's saying about working in local areas and continuing as we are. So there's no great groundswell of opinion for closing schools as far as the National Education Union locally is concerned. I'm actually getting very little traffic from colleagues. So sometimes a national edict doesn't always reflect local actions. So that's my local position. That may make me very unpopular with my members. However, that's our local position.
Okay, thank you, John. Lynn Horton.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to agree with John there. As part of the NASUWT, we're also not getting a great deal of traffic from our members, which are suggesting that we need to be closing schools. They're all very supportive of the need to maintain education at the moment, that all the work that's being done with all parties is making sure, as much as anybody can, that schools are as safe as they can possibly be in these very challenging and very quick changing times. Again, we aren't putting the same national position out at the moment, but we do have very clear criteria that we want to be met, and at the moment we do feel that that is the case.
That's really good to hear. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Do we have any more comments on that item? Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much for that. We move on to item 7. That's the report of the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Children's Services and the SEND progress update on the written statement of action. I'm going to pass you over to Sam Barron to present this, please.
Hello, I'm Sam Barron. I'm the Strategic Lead and Designated Clinical Officer for SEND. I'm also joined here by Kate O'Brien from Northumberland CCG, who is the Senior Head of Commissioning. Now I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. Right, so this is a progress update on our SEND written statement of action and the steps that we've taken during the pandemic. Just as a quick recap, we had 3 areas of weakness from our written statement of action. They were around joint planning and commissioning, around the support and the response from our schools in working with children and young people with SEND, and around the outcomes achieved and about successfully preparing them for adulthood. So what I'll do is I'll cover the 3 areas in the progress made, then I'll touch a little bit on the impact of COVID. From a planning and commissioning point of view, we have reviewed the structure and the governance and our work streams around this, because our inspection date was 2 years ago, and we have actually achieved a lot of the actions in our plan. So we need something that will future-proof us. We have undertaken a joint strategic needs assessment to clarify the needs of the population at this time. And I think importantly, we've had a very strong responsive local area approach to commissioning and delivery of mental health support at this point. In terms of our next steps, it's around the consultation of our draft SEND strategy, and it's being able to articulate the impact that our actions are having on children and young people, and with a focus on commissioning of our therapies. In working with our mainstream schools, there's been quite a significant amount of work in this area. We had, on the 1st of September, our Inclusive Education Service launched, and this provides specialist SEND advice to schools and settings and colleges. This was previously the SEND support services, and this is now free at point of delivery and has had seen quite significant take up from our schools in terms of seeking advice around how to support pupils with autism and mental health needs and speech and language and a wide range of other needs. We've worked with risk assessment processes to provide support to our schools around how to ensure that provision for children and young people with SEND continues to be delivered. And we've had a coordinated local area response around supporting pupils with social, emotional and mental health needs. And I mentioned the pop-up return to school hub and COOF, and there are a number of other areas of support that we've put in place. So our next steps are to keep going with the work that we're doing on mental health and to continue to provide support, training and challenge for our schools and settings around working with children and young people with SEND. In terms of improving outcomes, we have been able to provide positive assurance of increases in reading, writing and maths at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. We've got a 3-year ongoing trend in the reduction in fixed term and permanent exclusions for children with SEND. We have a clear transition pathway between children and adult social care, which starts a lot earlier. And we have developed a SEND dashboard and local area outcomes framework, which allows us to be able to have assurance that our systems, our processes, our services are delivering improvements for our population. Excuse me. Our next steps are around developing the data flow that underpins that dashboard and the outcome framework. In terms of the impact of COVID, there's quite a bit I've written in the report around the impact that it had and the responses that all the different partners had made in response to this. One of the pieces of work we carried out was a survey, and we did this over the summer. We had the largest response we've ever had from children and young people and their families with SEND. The survey highlighted the impact on families on mental and physical health, on education and on learning and on finance. It's important to note that most children and young people with an education healthcare plan did not attend school during lockdown, and that quite a few found homeschooling difficult. What I would say there is that the findings in our survey largely matched the findings that have been found at a national level. Our health and social care teams quickly adopted different ways of working to ensure that support was still able to be provided. It might have been in a different format, but it was always provided where it was needed. And our statutory processes around our education healthcare plan, they were largely unaffected. So moving on to our monitoring, the monitoring has increased to monthly during the pandemic, and this is a national initiative by NHS England and DfE. We've been able to provide positive assurance on the progress that is being made on all of our areas for improvement, but also on our response into the pandemic. And then the last thing to note is that we are conducting a SEND peer review in January 21 to enable us to have an independent sense check on our areas of strength and our areas that still require focus. So now I'm going to try and unshare and take any questions.
Thank you for that, Sam.
Have I unshared? Because I can't see anybody.
Thank you for that, Sam. Does anyone have any questions to raise? Councillor Daly?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks to Sam and the team, because I know when I used to sit in on these meetings, the amount of granular detail which was put into this is phenomenal. What I just wanted to pick up on was, where are we with the new form of In It Together, the parent support group, because that's a really important mixture to ensure that we get things right as far as our SEND provision is concerned.
So we have a new parent carer forum. It's called the Northumberland Parent Carer Forum, and it's been in operation since about June, July. It's quite small at the moment, but they are able to engage. They are joining us and working with us at all levels, both strategic and operationally, on some of the work that we're doing.
Sorry, and can I just ask a supplementary on that one?
Yes, okay.
So it's quite small at the minute, because I know the previous In It Together group were really, quite active and vociferous around holding us to account. What are we doing in terms of trying to increase that membership and reaching out to particularly parents or carers who have children with additional needs, to ensure that they are part of and can feel part of shaping and framing things as we go forward?
So we've got a number of initiatives around that. So we're working closely with Contact. So Contact is the national voluntary organisation who oversees all the parent carer forums and provides support. So we've done a number of recent initiatives, such as I've done a live Q&A session for parents and carers to be able to join and to be able to speak to me and ask any queries, and then, you know, consider joining the parent carer forum. We have it's going to be in December. We're holding a meeting with all the voluntary agencies who work with children and young people with SEND, so we can get together and we can hear the larger voice of what's happening on the ground around that across the county. And I think what has been helpful has been the use of virtual means. Actually, it is increasing people's engagement. You don't have to drive or go anywhere. You are able to do it from your home. And we do have, I know the Parent Carer Forum are actively exploring ways with Contact as to how they can increase their numbers and their capacity.
Mark, Chair, could I just say something additional, just for Wayne's reassurance? The group are small, but actually they are already offering or providing us with significant challenge in relation to some of our policies, processes, pathways, and procedures. So we are feeling the benefit of having them as members of the SEND Strategic Board already. So just for your assurance.
Okay. Is that okay, Wayne? Yeah. All right. John Sanderson.
Oh, yep. Hi, Samantha. Samantha, one of the summaries states that some children thrived away from the pressures of school. Now, I don't want to do teachers out of a job. However, was this the fact that they were having some school and some time at home, or was it because they were at home all the time? And I wondered whether this was worth following up and looking into. I don't know how significant the numbers were, but clearly, if children are doing better in a different environment, then that's worth building on and looking into. And it refers back to something I mentioned at the last meeting about an outreach project that Collingwood were having. And I wondered if there's any focus on looking at these very bespoke little projects.
It's difficult in terms of having an overarching theme, because there were lots of individual circumstances described by families through that. There was certainly a group of young people, often with autism or with speech and language and communication needs, who experience difficulties with social interactions at school, and actually not having to navigate those social interactions at school was less stressful for a small group of families that responded as part of this. Some children and young people did not access learning at home because it was not able to be provided, and that can also improve or decrease stress. I think there's always mileage in exploring lots of different options. I think there's learning that is yet to come out of this about how we explore how we have been able to successfully engage and reach some pupils that we have found hard in the past. But conversely, it doesn't work for everybody. So I think it's still a work in progress to look at what learning we do want to take forward from this.
Yeah, so this is something that we will be looking into moving forward.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any more questions, Audrey?
Thank you, Chair. Just to really come in and reinforce what Sam talked about, and really, John, to give you some reassurance on the rest of the committee. This is one of our key priorities as an education and skills team moving forward, to look at impact of COVID, but actually what are the wide-ranging models that we can operate in Northumberland? How do we meet the needs of our residents much more widely and broadly than perhaps we have done historically in the past? And actually, as Sam has said, that's not just about Northumberland, that's been looked at across the country without doubt. But that is a high priority for us, John, and certainly looking at some of those individual examples that currently exist, which we have evaluated, looked at the initial success, and we're really keen to see how we can replicate that and how we can make sure we've got that available across the whole of the patch of Northumberland.
Okay, thank you. If I can just pick something up, Samantha, it's on page 5 of the report. The first bullet point on there, the majority of children did not attend school during the period of the survey. Small number of children did not receive any schooling at home. Physical and mental health became worse, etc. So it's disappointing to see, about no schooling at home. And it's something we need to address, especially with a period of current lockdown. Is there anything being put in place to, pick up on that we can improve on that situation?
Yes, I mean, I do think these were unique to the individual circumstances of the families that responded. So I think we have learned a lot of lessons around this, and certainly we're not in the same situation as we were then. Some of our learners, do schoolwork at school, and they don't do schoolwork at home because of the way that they view learning. And so it was very difficult for a very small group of learners to be able to accept to do work that wasn't at school from school. I think moving forward, how we're developing and supporting those young learners is key. And I think the inclusive education services have been doing a lot of work around how they can support pupils, particularly with autism, to engage more in work at home. Right. So we've got some services and some support that is there and available. However, those children and young people are now in school and are attending school. So I think it's things that we need to have in place should we ever move to the point where our learners are not in school. That's where we need to mobilise and make sure that we have systems in place, which is what we're working with our inclusive education services.
So I'm assuming that would be the same for like bullet point 3, where it says further, parents reported a lack of communication, schoolwork sent home that their child found difficult to do.
Yes, and that's something that we've picked up with our Northumberland Parent Carer Forum, and in terms of actions. So the the action plan that has come out as a result of this survey is on the local offer, and I can send a link to this group so you can see the actions that we've got in place. That plan details what we're doing around providing support and improving our communication between our schools. I don't have the report in front of me, so I can't quote the numbers, but we do have plans in place to work with our schools to improve that communication.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Chair, could I just also add to that? Sorry, just in relation to that, we have a small number of schools, of our special schools, who, when they have a positive case of COVID, it makes it more difficult for them to remain fully open. So we are also working with our schools to understand how we can support them and their pupils and their students to access some form of education, because we don't want this stop-start process of children sometimes being in school and then a case being identified and having to be at home again, and the impact that has on both the child and the family as well in relation to that. So we're working with schools around that, because that will become a challenge for us as more cases come down.
Great, good, thank you. Russ Wallace.
Sam, that link would be very helpful, I think.
Yes, I can definitely get that circulated with the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any more questions? Scott?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. One on page 4, where it describes the interactions, or rather interventions, of the Northumberland Inclusive Education Service, 598. I just wondered what kind of proportion that was, whether that was 598 of all requests, or whether that was identified children, or you know what I mean, whether that was good, bad, or indifferent in terms of what we were aiming for. And then again on page 5, where it says 426 families responded to the survey, I just wondered what kind of percentage of families that was, whether that was a good return, a bad return, or 50%, 40%, or whatever. And then on page 8, where it refers to education healthcare plans and the majority being met by the 20 weeks and a handful of exemptions being around, I just wondered what kind of thing those handful were, and would it actually be a handful? So is it 5 or is it, more? I'm not sure.
It was 2 cases. And they were individual to the specific circumstances of the individual, in that a face-to-face assessment was needed actually in an educational setting in order to be able to determine their needs, and the child was at home.
Right. Okay.
And they have subsequently been done as been completed as soon as school recommenced. Right, page 4. That was the inclusive education services and the amount of contacts. It's difficult for us to be able to benchmark this because it's a new service that launched on the 1st of September. What we can say is the data that we've got from the services shows that all partnerships have been engaging in seeking support for our learners with SEND, and its range, it's been pretty evenly split across the different types of need. I think the largest amount of support that has been accessed has been around social, emotional, mental health needs and autism.
Right.
So those are the 2 services that have had the largest requests, but the other services are not far behind them. Schools are being very proactive in seeking support where it's been identified that it's needed.
I just wasn't sure if we'd done a kind of a business case before setting up this service that said, we anticipate X, and then we've got this number here, and I just kind of wondered how close it was to, because we must have demonstrated need in order to set up a new service. So I just wondered how we demonstrated the need and what kind of numbers there were to reflect whether that was good performance, if you like.
So in terms of it being a new service, it was the SEND support services. So it was redesigning the way that they work so that we could provide more detailed, responsive support to schools sooner, and to remove the service level agreement so that it then became accessible free at point of delivery rather than relying on a school's budget capacity in order to fund the support. So it was making it free at point of delivery. So it's difficult to match those as to...
No, I'll see, and over time we'll be able to see.
Yeah. And I'm afraid there's one more query that I don't think I've answered, have I?
Sorry, it was page 5, where it says that 426 families responded to the survey. I just wondered what kind of percentage that was, whether it was a good turnout, bad turnout, or indifferent.
I think if we look at this in the context of engagement with previous SEND surveys, our highest has been 117. So the fact that we got 426 families is quite significant. And to give you an idea, there was a national survey undertaken by Council for Disabled Children, I believe, but I'll have to check on that. And nationally, they got 4,000. So that's across the whole of the country. We got 426. So I'm very pleased. I feel that it gave us a really good insight as to the experiences and actions that we need to take as a result. And I'll make sure that the action plan is circulated with the minutes of the meeting so that you can see the steps that we're going to be taking.
I mean, that context really helpful, Chair, because obviously that is a really good news story in terms of the increase in participation of the survey, but also in comparison to the national numbers, Northumberland's fared very well in terms of families and carers participating, and obviously that gives us a real insight into the needs of the families that require additional support. So I'm pleased with that. Thank you.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, definite good result. Any more questions? Okay. The recommendations are that we note the contents of the report and recognise the ongoing development and identify any potential issues for further consideration if appropriate. Are we okay to accept those recommendations? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for that report. That's really good.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8, report of the scrutiny officer.
Thanks, Chair. The work programme is there for members' information. Members might notice that the care proceedings report was supposed to come to this committee, but it's been deferred to next month's meeting. Other than that, it's pretty much there just for members to note. But as always, if members have anything they want to add to the work programme, you just need to either speak to myself or Councillor Swinburne as the chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 9, I'm not aware of any urgent business. And so with that...
Chair, sorry, on the work programme, very quickly, briefly. I just wondered if, given the conversations that we've had today, whether the working group stuff on the free school meals will come to scrutiny?
I'm hoping that the report that I've requested would be done in time for the December facts committee. With regards to the working group, we've got to wait, as Kath mentioned earlier, we've got to wait and see if what comes from that, what further information we can deem from that. I know it was announced yesterday. The information that was announced that you heard was as much as I heard as well on that, Scott. So at this present time, I can't give you any further detail. And as Kath said earlier on, we need to get in there. She give you more information. As I say, I emailed to say that we need representation on that because it's more than just free school meals. It's about child poverty. But I agree that we do need to have representation on there. So as soon as I can get any more information, then I'm happy to share that.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just conscious of the critical time for the December school holidays, that's all.
Yeah, I completely agree that we need to get in there and do more to make sure something's done in time rather than just talking about what we're going to, discuss. It needs more action, as quickly as possible. Okay. So I have no other urgent business. And at that, I'm happy to close the meeting. And thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you all at our next committee.